On the morning of September 30th, 2025, a sense of urgency swept through the highest levels of the U.S. military. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, known for his decisive leadership style, issued a sudden, mandatory order that would ripple across continents. Every senior military leader from the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Space Force was to report immediately for a classified summit. The message was clear: attendance was not optional, and the stakes were unknown. But this wasn't happening at the Pentagon, the traditional nerve center of American defense. Instead, the chosen location was Quantico Marine Corps Base in Virginia, a place more often associated with elite training than with high-level strategy sessions. Within hours, hundreds of the nation's most powerful generals and admirals dropped everything. Some were pulled from ongoing operations overseas, others from critical domestic posts. Flights were chartered, schedules cleared, and security details scrambled as these leaders converged on Quantico from every corner of the globe. The air of mystery only deepened when word spread that President Donald Trump himself would be attending. His presence transformed what might have been a routine briefing into a national spectacle, raising the stakes and the tension in equal measure. Yet, as officers arrived, there was no sign of an imminent crisis. No attack, no disaster, no clear threat. Whispers filled the hallways. Some speculated about a new global conflict, others about sweeping changes in military leadership. The lack of information left even the most seasoned commanders uneasy, their imaginations running wild. The orders were absolute: no exceptions, no explanations. Each officer received a sealed envelope marked mandatory. The message inside was brief, offering no clues, only the directive to assemble at Quantico without delay. Behind the scenes, the logistical effort was staggering. Military transport planes were rerouted, airspace was cleared, and entire flight schedules were upended to ensure every leader arrived on time. The base itself buzzed with activity as staff worked around the clock to prepare for the unprecedented influx. As the officers stepped onto the base, a mix of anticipation and skepticism was palpable. Some exchanged nervous glances, others tried to mask their concern with small talk. All knew that something extraordinary was about to unfold. For one day, Quantico, usually a place where future leaders are forged, became the epicenter of American military power. The base was transformed, with convoys of vehicles, security checkpoints, and a media presence gathering outside the gates. When the officers finally entered the main conference hall, they found no detailed war plans or crisis briefings. Instead, the official agenda was surprisingly vague. Boost morale. The simplicity of the message only deepened the mystery. As the heavy doors closed behind them, the atmosphere shifted. The room was thick with tension, and it was clear to everyone present that this would be no ordinary meeting. Something significant was about to be revealed. The stage was set for a gathering that would soon become infamous. A moment in history when the fate of the nation's military leadership hung in the balance, and the world waited to see what would happen next. Officially, the meeting was billed as a pep rally, a chance to energize the ranks and remind everyone of their shared mission. The invitation promised a celebration of unity and achievement, a rare moment for the military's top brass to gather under one roof and reflect on their collective progress. The stated goal was to boost esprit de corps, to foster camaraderie and pride among those who serve. Attendees expected a morale-boosting event, filled with stories of heroism, teamwork, and the values that bind the armed forces together. Secretary Hegseth and President Trump were scheduled to take the stage, not just to recognize recent accomplishments, but to set the tone for the future. Their presence was meant to signal the importance of the occasion and to honor the dedication of those in uniform. The agenda included unveiling a new vision for the military, with promises of innovation, renewed strength, and a commitment to national security. The audience anticipated hearing about new initiatives and the path forward, but as the speeches began, the atmosphere shifted. Instead of a straightforward military briefing, the event took on the energy of a campaign rally. The rhetoric was charged, the applause lines carefully crafted, and the focus seemed to drift from military matters to political messaging. Many in the audience noticed the change in tone. What was supposed to be a professional dialogue about the future of the armed forces felt more like political theater. The substance of the meeting was overshadowed by slogans and partisan applause. The generals and admirals, some of the nation's most experienced leaders, sat quietly in their seats. There was no opportunity for questions, no open discussion, and no real engagement with the issues at hand. Instead, they became a silent audience, expected to listen and applaud. The top-down format left many feeling like props in a carefully staged event, rather than valued participants in a meaningful conversation. The sense of being on display, rather than being heard, was hard to ignore. As the speeches continued, the focus on partisan talking points became unmistakable. Any genuine attempt to inspire or unite the military was lost amid the political overtones, leaving some to question the true intent of the gathering. Many officers left the event feeling uneasy, convinced they had been summoned not for a morale boost, but for a political spectacle. The discomfort was palpable, as participants exchanged uneasy glances and quietly questioned the purpose of their presence. The disconnect between the event's stated purpose and its actual tone was jarring. In the days and weeks that followed, criticism mounted, with many questioning whether the military's leadership had been used as a backdrop for political gain. In the end, the true purpose of the meeting remained in doubt, leaving a lingering sense of uncertainty among those who attended, and fueling a debate that would not soon be forgotten. Secretary Hegseth stepped onto the national stage with a bold declaration. He was determined to revive what he called the warrior ethos. This wasn't just a slogan, but a sweeping vision for the future of the armed forces. Hegseth argued that the military's core mission had been diluted, its focus blurred by what he saw as distractions from its primary purpose, to fight and win wars. He called for a return to the values of discipline, sacrifice, and relentless training, insisting that these were the qualities that once made the military the most formidable force in the world. According to Hegseth, years of prioritizing social policies and internal reforms had eroded the military's fighting edge. He painted a picture of an institution bogged down by bureaucracy and shifting priorities, warning that America's enemies would not wait for it to catch up. The only solution, he said, was to refocus on combat readiness and operational excellence. In a move that sparked immediate controversy, Hegseth singled out what he called fat generals, vowing to enforce stricter physical fitness standards across all ranks. He also hinted at a possible rollback of recent gains for women in combat roles, suggesting that the military's standards should be uncompromising, regardless of gender or background. Perhaps most provocatively, Hegseth announced his intention to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion programs within the armed forces. He argued that these initiatives, while well-intentioned, had become divisive and undermined the unity and singular focus required for military success. Critics immediately accused him of turning back the clock on progress, while supporters cheered his call for a more unified, mission-driven force. In a symbolic gesture, Hegseth even floated the idea of renaming the Department of Defense to the Department of War, signaling a return to a more aggressive, unapologetic posture. This proposal was met with both applause and alarm, as it evoked memories of a different era in American military history. The message was clear. Hegseth was calling for radical change. He envisioned a leaner, tougher, and more traditional military, one that would be laser-focused on combat effectiveness and national defense, above all else. The reaction was immediate and deeply divided. For some service members and veterans, Hegseth's vision was a long-overdue correction, a necessary step to restore pride and purpose. For others, it represented a dangerous ideological shift that threatened the hard-won progress toward a more inclusive and adaptable force. Hegseth's speech marked a dramatic cultural pivot, placing combat readiness and traditional values at the very heart of military identity. The debate over the future of the armed forces was now front and center, with the stakes higher than ever. As the Pentagon grappled with these sweeping proposals, one thing was certain: the future direction of America's military, and its very identity, was suddenly up for grabs. President Trump's speech pushed the event further into political territory. He spoke less about strategy, more about his political agenda, addressing his base, not the military. Trump floated the idea of using the military in American cities, blurring lines between defense and domestic roles. Many officers were alarmed by the casual talk of deploying troops at home. At one point, Trump told the generals to just have a good time, trivializing their responsibilities. The speech felt like a loyalty test, not a professional address. The nonpartisan tradition of the military was under direct challenge. Inside the ranks, frustration was palpable. Many saw the event as a waste of money and time. Hundreds of leaders pulled from critical duties for a 90-minute speech. Some joked the meeting could have been an email. The cost, logistics, and lost productivity were staggering. The speeches offered nothing urgent or new, just political messaging. Instead of boosting morale, the event left many officers resentful and disillusioned. The pep rally had backfired. Beyond waste, the meeting created a massive security risk. Nearly all top military leaders were gathered in one, publicly known location, a strategic vulnerability. Critics called it an inexcusable risk, violating basic operational security. Standard procedure is to never concentrate leadership in one place, especially without urgent cause. The event's public nature made it a potential target for adversaries. Many saw it as reckless, a photo op that gambled with national security. The risk far outweighed any morale boost. The defense community was deeply troubled. The meeting's timing made things worse. It happened hours before a possible government shutdown. Congress was deadlocked, and the Pentagon faced furloughs and unpaid troops. Instead of crisis planning, senior leaders were at Quantico for speeches. The disconnect was stark. While Washington battled over the budget, the military's top brass sat through a pep rally. The event seemed oblivious to the real crisis at hand. Critics saw it as a sign of poor judgment and misplaced priorities. The waste of money and time was amplified by the looming shutdown. The administration's leadership was called into question. Reaction to the Quantico meeting split sharply along political lines. Supporters called it a bold move, praising direct communication and a return to core values. Pentagon spokespeople insisted morale was boosted. Critics, including lawmakers and former officers, called for resignations and condemned the event as dangerous politicization. The military community itself was uneasy. Many felt forced into a political display. The combination of partisan speeches and talk of domestic troop deployment alarmed many in uniform. The event was seen as a loyalty test, not a leadership summit. The Pentagon's apolitical tradition was under threat. The fallout was immediate and intense. In the end, the question lingered. Could it have been an email? The answer, for most, was yes. No classified or urgent information required this spectacle. The administration wanted a show of power, not a real dialogue. The event wasted money, created security risks, and came at the worst possible time. Instead of unity, it bred resentment and division. The phrase, "could have been an email," became shorthand for all the criticisms. The Quantico meeting stands as a cautionary tale of political optics over responsible leadership. The cost, trust, morale, and the military's nonpartisan legacy.